Ko te manatu aorere te wāhi mahi. Ko Ngāti awa rawa ko Ngāti aorere ngā iwi. Ko Brook Barrington ahau. Te hei Māori ora. First, I want to support the various mihi that have been already said today and acknowledge the mana whenua of this region. Te ati awa, Ngāti raukawa, Ngāti toa, rangatira tēnā koutou te mana whenua. And to all of you here, eina mana, eina reo, eina waka, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And with some anticipation of those yet to arrive, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, former Governor-General Sir Anand Sachinand, former Prime Ministers and Ministers, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, former and current Members of Parliament, members of the Judiciary, members of the Academy, former and current department heads, including a number of my predecessors, former and current members of the Ministry, Excellencies, honoured guests, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we celebrate the 75th anniversary of what now is known as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. This today is one of a small number of initiatives which will be running over the year to June 2019, deliberately modest as befits the Ministry's cautionary regard for the taxpayer's dollar and wariness of self-congratulation, but intended as a mark of respect to all who have toiled and who toil still to advance New Zealand's international interests. I will later this afternoon offer a vote of thanks to those former senior colleagues and current staff who are responsible for today and for the unfolding of this anniversary year. My aim this morning, however, is to echo some of the voices that were present at the creation, and then at the 50th anniversary in 1993, and then of today, focusing on world, organisation and people. I hope in this way briefly to untangle some of the complex polyphony that is the song of the Ministry. What then of those present at the creation and of the world they faced? War, of course, and British weakness, and American might, and Australian dissatisfaction, and Canada and the Commonwealth, both more important than ever before. Asia was something to be kept at arm's length rather than embraced, and leadership in the Pacific was something to be asserted once the war was over. As for the department itself, Alistair McIntosh wrote that in facing the risks, the dangers, the uncertainties, the violence of this age, we have, with what I hope is reasonable foresight and cautious resolution, followed pragmatic and progressive policies. And Carl Berenson too. I do not believe that anything that is morally wrong can ever be politically right. Frank Corner, with his unsurpassed acuity, said it best. Berenson the moralist, McIntosh the pragmatist, each judging problems from his different standpoint. And so it has been for 75 years, the baseline of the creators singing interwoven melodies of principle and pragmatism. Of the people that made up the Ministry, McIntosh, writing in 1965, said that in selecting New Zealand's external affairs staff over the past 22 years, we have tried to find people with the highest academic qualifications, who possessed at the same time those qualities of character and personality and New Zealandishness which could cause people overseas and his or her fellow countrymen and women to feel or say, that must be the best type of New Zealander. Intellect and temperament then, and judgment, and a liberal decency too. They were what Mackintosh privileged, even if today we might phrase it differently. Then to 1993, 50 years on, a changed, but perhaps fundamentally unchanged world, and new lines added to the motet. The Cold War world, dominated by two superpowers, had given way to a more diffuse international order, observed Richard Nottage, adding that the US had become the single most influential country in the world and that there were three global economic power centres, the US, the European communities and Japan, with Australia a fourth for us. No China, not then, and a world of which it could unblushingly be said that political and security issues had less prominence in the overall scheme of things than in earlier periods of the ministry's life. And within the department, continuity. But not just continuity. The ending of full bipartisanship, observed Nottage, had not made the ministry's life any easier. The ministry's role as an impartial advisor to the government had not changed, he said, while adding that a bipolar political approach to some key policy issues constrained the ministry's role and made it more difficult to discharge. Another difference from Mackintosh's time, he went on to say, concerned the expectations of ministers. The influence of modern communications and the urgency of response was, he said, a break from the past. True then, and more true today. But it does to remember that those at the creation had their own challenges. Here is Mackintosh writing to Berenson in 1946. My last session with the Prime Minister, Peter Fraser, took place somewhere after 1 a.m, a few mornings ago, and finished about 2:30 a.m. We took it in turns to go to sleep. And as on the first day, 50 years ago, said Nottage, the essence of the ministry was the quality of its people. Continuity again, but some accented notes emerging too. The role of partners in the Foreign Service, said Nottage, has never been well or widely understood. Their immense contribution and the sacrifices made have been neither properly recognised nor objectively rewarded. I myself should add that the same might be said about stenographers, as they were then, and members of the typing pool and communicators, often unsung and unheralded, but without whom, especially in those pre-desktop days, absolutely nothing could be done, and from whom much could be learnt. I still cannot bring myself to break the proper noun New Zealand between two lines for fear of being collared by Joyce. And, continued Nottage, it is important that the ministry's composition of staff reflect as far as possible the society we represent. Observing that there were 41 Māori staff and 20 Pacifica staff in the ministry out of a total staff of 600, ratios which were bad then and which have shifted little since. And so we come to today's world, organisation and people. Alistair Mackintosh was an historian by training. What, I wonder, would have been his reaction to 2018 with its own particular geostrategic tensions, weakening of the rules-based order, existential threat to the planet, and technological challenges to the legitimacy of the state. A world in which political and security issues have become more prominent, not less, where resilience and institutional robustness at home, where economic resilience and institutional robustness at home have taken on a greater significance, and where the calibration of our relations with other states can require the finest of tuning. I expect that he would have fallen back on the same qualities that have served this country and this ministry well for 75 years and more: principle, pragmatism, and a phlegmatic professionalism. For Mackintosh knew, because he had to, that human agency, above all, is what shapes the future. Let me assure you that these qualities and that sense of agency still matter to an organisation of talented millennials and Gen others. But to 75 years of song, they are adding their own distinctive contribution. It can be a significant challenge to feel that you belong in a foreign ministry. Diplomats often don't feel a sense of belonging until after that magical first posting, and some of those not in the Foreign Service perhaps never feel like they belong at all. And yet for a ministry of the size of MFAT, we need to build a place in which everyone, all 1,500 staff, feel like they belong, feel aligned with the values of the organisation, and are willing to give us their discretionary effort. It was ever thus, of course, but sometimes tone is as important as tune. There is some wariness today about using the metaphor of being a family, a construct in which, as we all know from our own personal experience, any member can claim a proprietary interest while bearing no obligation to civility. But we can be a community, and that community can be happy, healthy, and high-performing for all. To succeed in that, we must behave as one ministry in which every person in every job family across every location is respected for the skills they have and the job they do. This without fear or favour or the cloak of privilege or of rank. In short, we are responding to the urgent call from a new generation for us to be kinder and gentler inside our own house, while still being exact and exacting in our diplomacy. And so we are getting better at materially recognising, or in some cases remembering, the crucial value and importance of staff locally employed by post, of our specialist and corporate staff, and of those who provide our technical, executive, development and administrative support. We are putting considerable emphasis on comprehensively meeting our obligations for the health and safety of all staff. We are striving for a point of intersection between technology, mobility and security which is more enabling. We are trying to be more open, humble and respectful in our dealings with other agencies and those who reside outside the ministry community, by too many of whom are we seen still as an acquired taste. And we are trying to become a more porous organisation in which people can more freely come and go in the course of a career. For just as it was for Mackintosh and those who followed, it always comes down to the people of the ministry, described by one of my illustrious predecessors as that wonderful collection of saints and sinners, of eccentricities and brilliances. So how today do we attract, develop and retain the skilled and passionate people we need and need more than ever? More staff to ease the pressure will help, but having more people is not the same as having experienced people, and we therefore need to recruit for diversity and build for longevity. That means doing much better in respecting the particular place of Māori in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It means still privileging academic distinction and the fine-grained use of language, but also building a capability that offsets our preference for making policy by narrative. It means embracing our place as a part of the wider public service, recognising that talent and heavy accountabilities are not ours alone. And it means doing more inside our own house to privilege leadership that is both rigorous and empathetic. This, of course, is the continuation of a chant that began with Barrington and Mackintosh, and which has been sung into life by succeeding generations. The reverberations of that glorious polyphony will be heard today. I, for one, will be listening with gratitude to both the bass line and the treble. Thank you.